Good morning. It's Wednesday, February 4th, and I have a frog in my throat. I'm Ted Rall. That's John Kiriakou, and you're
Hey,
watching
everybody.
the program with Ted Rall and John Kiriakou. Thanks for joining us this morning. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Ted.
In just a few minutes, joining us will be National Security and Foreign Affairs Correspondent Murtaza Hussain from Dropsitenews. And we'll be talking about the latest out of the Epstein Files, and I'm sure it's going to be a wide-ranging and interesting conversation. He'll be with us for just shy of half an hour. So, as usual, if you have your questions, comments, and anything else you want to say, please put it live in the Rumble or the YouTube chat. John and I will feed it up to Murtaza, and we'll talk about it. And, of course, after that, we'll be talking about other news that's interesting, we think you need to know about, and anything you guys want to talk about as well. Trump, we didn't really get to this yesterday, but in any meaningful way, but Trump is floating the idea of taking away the elections from the states, well, at least the Democratic states. And you could see that one coming 5 million miles away. We'll see what the Constitution has to say about that. I would be remiss, John, if I didn't want to talk to you about this Greek Coast Guard
this is bad.
Tragedy. 15 migrants at least killed in this collision. And last but not least, this Israeli-backed militia is basically terrorizing some of the first women, and probably, I would imagine, some of the first men too, but some of the first women to return back to Gaza. I guess they basically left Gaza via Rafah for a day trip or two, and then went back very quickly and immediately got treated and harangued and harassed and detained in a horrible way. We'll talk about that. Before we forget everything else, don't forget Robbie Aid. We are at about $700 out of $1,000 needed. Let's go ahead and put up the banner. That's the GoFundMe. And just go to GoFundMe.com and search for DeProgram Robbie. I will go ahead and put the URL up there if I can find it. But it's like StreamYard is acting funny. But anyway, just go to DeProgram.com and it will. Here we go. Okay, that was very strange. And I will go ahead and put that up. Please stay tuned. And I guess we'll go. What do you think, John? If you're amenable, we'll just go ahead and bring in Murtaza.
Looking forward to it.
And we'll talk about it. Okay, here we go. Without further ado, joining us for this segment is Murtaza Hussain. He's the National Security and Foreign Affairs Correspondent at Dropsitenews, and he's a very well-followed and well-informed fellow, and it's a pleasure to have you joining us.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks, John. Great to be on with you.
Welcome.
So obviously the media is pouring through, and journalists are pouring through the 3 million or so documents that have been released, some in highly redacted, some in somewhat redacted form as a result of the Epstein data dump. There's about 3 million more that we haven't seen, and we don't know if we're ever going to get to see. There's a lot of questions about this. Couple stories related to the Epstein story that just sort of broke overnight. Oddly, Epstein we knew he was an art collector, and we know that he was monetizing the collectible art market, but inexplicably he apparently got someone from the UAE sent him cloth pieces from the Kaaba, which is of course the shrine in Mecca in Saudi Arabia.
Insane. Insane. I couldn't believe it when I read it.
Yeah, I mean, what's up with that?
What's up with that?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on to discuss this subject, because, you would think that there'd be a greater appetite to talk about some of these disclosures, but it's actually been relatively muted, I would say, in the last few years when we started getting some information and granular, detailed information about Epstein's activities. So, for context, myself and my colleagues at Dropsitenews have been doing a series of stories based on Epstein's intelligence activities. And we've been doing that for maybe about 6-7 months now. And those stories were based not primarily on government disclosures, but on 2 sets of hacked emails that were released separately and just happened to contain Epstein's correspondence. One was with the former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, who was known to be an Epstein associate, but he had several thousands of emails with Epstein, which were in this hacked inbox, which posted on a site called the Distributed Denial of Secrets. And then there's another actual inbox, which was actually Epstein himself, partially his Yahoo inbox, which we had, and Bloomberg had a similar inbox from him as well too. So we did about maybe almost a dozen stories based on those emails, which were quite limited, really. They were only several thousand messages, but we got tremendous information out there about his ties with global leaders, about his intelligence connections, about his financial interests, many different things about his life. And that was a pretty limited, as I said, set of data. So this new dump, 3 million files, is so tremendous. It's really like a lot to go through. So when people have asked me what are my takeaways and so forth, I would say I don't exactly know yet, because many people are jumping to many quick conclusions about it, both to dismiss it all, which I find more problematic, or even to make a firm conclusion. But I think that it was so laborious, it took so much time for us to figure out what was going on in the smaller set, that I think it's going to take us quite a lot of time to get digestible information out of this. But that said, there are some things in there which were, low-hanging fruit, you could say. They were very obvious, egregious, kind of shocking episodes, interactions he had with individuals, things related to people's, if not involvement, but at least, sharing like sexual encounters with Epstein, or, photos and things like that, which do relate to his sex crimes potentially. That's all in there. And John, you mentioned the his interactions with the Emiratis and Saudis and Qataris and so forth. He had very intimate interactions with them, actually, and this was the basis of the story that the Dropsite did in mid-January about his ties with a gentleman named Sultan Salayem, who's one of the most powerful people in the UAE, and he's the chief of this company called Dubai Ports World, which owns and operates ports all over the world. Epstein had a very close relationship with him. You can read more detail in the story, but I was actually reading more emails when the new dump between him and Salayem. They would routinely share kind of like sophomoric, vulgar emails in between, talking about arranging meetings with powerful people and business and so forth. They're very close. And so, when you mentioned that he would send this religious relics by these Emiratis and Saudis and so forth, I think it was reflective of the tremendous importance and weight that they put on their relationship with Epstein. They viewed him as somebody who was integral to their political interests in the United States, and beyond that as well too, in Europe and Russia and elsewhere, and someone who they really had intimate, close, fondness for and liking enough. And I'll say it's very funny. They sent him the cloth of the Kaaba. This was many years after he'd already become notorious as a sex pedophile. So it was like they didn't even care. And if you look at other emails with him and that the woman who arranged the shipment to him,
do we know where these relics are now, by the way?
That I don't know, but according to email, it was sent to his island, like the island where the sex island, so forth. So it was like layers upon layers of kind of irony and kind of grotesqueness. But I think the issue is that at this strata, socioeconomically and politically, of people's power, the ethnic, religious, racial sort of divisions, which are so pronounced, maybe at the general public's level, they almost kind of dissipate. They all view themselves sort of on the same team or part of the same club. And I think that's also one of the subtexts of this rare glimpse into elite activities and communications afforded by these emails.
Murtaza, one of the weasel words in journalism is ties. And I'm not accusing you of weaselry, but, it's like so-and-so has ties. Because that can mean anything, right? Like someone sent an email to someone one time, that's a tie. When you say that Epstein, let's say, had ties with, for example, the Emiratis, I mean, you got into it a little bit, but I mean, like, kind of like, what degree of intimacy or coziness would you, like on a scale from 1 to 10, at elite levels, would you put this at?
Yeah, and people. This is part of one of the problems with the dump, is that people are going through the email and the emails, and they're seeing like 1 or 2 emails that he had with some individual at some point, and positing that means that individual must have been involved in his sex crimes or knowledgeable about them and so forth. Where that's not necessarily the case. There are a lot of people whose names show up in there once or twice just because they happen to be in the same circles, and even meeting with him actually is not necessarily indicative of a wrongdoing per se. So, but I think in this case, it's interesting. This part of what we talked about in our story is that there was a very long-term, years-long relationship, almost like regular daily contact, if not weekly and so forth.
Really?
And also, very crucially, involvement in meetings, business deals, investments together, in introductions to powerful people as well, too, for purposes of making business with them and making deals with them. So that was all taking place. And I think with Epstein, in the case of the Emiratis, Epstein was very open about his interest with others of kind of laying the groundwork for what would later become the Abraham Accords. And the Abraham Accords were signed in 2020, a year after Epstein died. But he would actually set up meetings between Emirati and Israeli elites for the purpose of building connections with them that they could use to make business, but also could be used for the groundwork of later political reconciliation, which actually did come to pass shortly after Epstein passed away. And, in the case of him and Soleim, it's very interesting. There was a Rolling Stone article some years ago that quoted Epstein kind of boasting about the fact that he basically was so close with the owner of a port in East Africa, the port of Berbera, which is now in a territory called Somaliland, and that he said he basically owned the port because of his relationship with this individual. And no one really knew what he was talking about at that time. It sounded like an empty boast and maybe excessive sort of comment. But I think the emails do show that he did have an extremely close relationship with Soleim. He wasn't lying about that. And whether that meant he owned the port and that's how he got rich off it, maybe that we can't say from the country. There's certainly some that's valid. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. What would somebody like Suleiman get from a relationship like this? If you're already rich and you're already connected and you know that Jeffrey Epstein is a convicted pedophile, why even cultivate a relationship like this? Is there any indication in these documents what was the quid pro quo, what he got out of it?
Well, it's so the funny thing is we have so many of their emails in this case going back many, many years that we can actually reconstruct at least some of the relationship and the motivations behind it. But the emails actually start, and then not saying this is when they first met, but the correspondence becomes very extensive around 2006. And in 2006 there was the event which happened, which many people don't remember today, but it was the failed purchase of some ports in the United States by Dubai Port World. Yeah. So at that time, it was the height of the Iraq War. 9/11 just happened. There was a lot of suspicion of the idea that a Middle Eastern, Arab, or Muslim country would own critical infrastructure in the United States, and it generated this huge backlash. And then the deal was ultimately reneged upon. So for the UAE, that was a very eye-opening sort of event because they thought that they had already ingratiated themselves with American elites, and they couldn't believe that this happened, and they were sort of pushed back upon. And in their view, they needed to redouble their sort of information and influence buying in the United States to make sure that never happened again, and that they could do whatever they want in the United States. They basically saw the U.S. as like an open market that they want to participate in and buy whatever they want. And to do that, they needed to build ties with American elites who could advocate for them. And there was also perception, which I think is still to this day, that the pro-Israel American elites are a very, very, fertile ground to buy and seed influence in the United States. So Epstein was seen as somebody like this. He was like a pro-Israel American elite who, if you develop ties with, he could make sure that your relationship or your reputation in the U.S. is good, your relationship with U.S. policymakers and the press is good. And Soleim sort of built his relationship with Epstein around that time. They started visiting him, going to the island and so forth, and being in regular contact with him, drawing upon his advice for many, many different things. And over the course of a decade, and our story reconstructs this, it goes all the way to his death in 2019, just a few months before he was arrested and died, actually. Epstein and Soleim had become very intimate, and he relied upon Epstein to help sort of position Dubai and position the UAE in a PR sense in the US. But I think at that point, they also became very good friends. They had shared economic interests, and they had shared geopolitical interests in the region too.
Murtaza, two-part question. Why wasn't the pedophilia conviction and the previous jail term toxic to these people? And could you possibly go to the island and not know the sordid occurrences that were happening?
Right.
Yeah, well, that's a really amazing question, because I think we all have that question looking at these correspondence, because it's not even that people are different. In some of these emails, some of the messages and so forth, people are congratulating him on his skills with the quote unquote the ladies. And this is years after he was well known for the pedophilia and sex trafficking and so forth. It was almost treated as a subject of levity and irony and so forth that he was engaged in this. In his birthday book, if you look at some of the pages, people have written messages and drawn pictures. They're congratulating him on being such a good pedophile. That's actually what's going on in this. And so it's almost
they don't only not care, they think it's funny.
They think it's funny.
The old boys network.
They want to continue visiting the island. They're still talking about their own sexual encounters in their emails with Epstein, asking for advice and so forth. So I think that basically what is indicative of is this was a class of people who had enjoyed tremendous impunity. And to be honest, they still enjoy impunity because nothing's really happened per se. For the most part, a few people here and there, but for the vast majority of them, nothing's really happened. So they viewed it as sort of something that they were above laws and above common morality and so forth. So the whole idea this is wrong or they should be worried about it never seemed to emerge to them as it would so obviously to us.
And they didn't think, oh, someday this could bite me in the ass.
Right.
Well, this is also the thing which I wonder because, a lot of these emails, this actually takes place, these communications, over a very long stretch of time during which the technological environment has changed in that time as well, too. There wasn't Signal chat or WhatsApp back in 2006 or even 2011 and so forth necessarily. So they were treating email the way we might treat text messages today. So they were communicating a lot there. And I think the whole understanding that this is something which could come out, or it's more like a record of the communications, maybe was not as imprinted upon everyone's mind at that time. But that said, they continue up to 2019, which is way beyond that point. So maybe it's also something that people got in the habit. And maybe these communications where they exist today, they would not take place in email. They take place in a format which is more ephemeral or more easy to conceal, at least.
Murtaza, we're going to talk a little bit later on after we lose you later in the show about the latest from Gaza, as you heard. How do you, and this is purely speculative, but how do you think Epstein's role as a connector in sort of the Malcolm Gladwell sort of vein, how would that have played out if he hadn't gone to prison and
it's a good
committed suicide, given the Gaza war?
Yeah, I think that he was somebody who was sort of this individual who bridged the worlds between the U.S., the Gulf Arab countries, and the Israelis. And there are other people like this who you can perceptibly see play a similar role, like the Jared Kushners and the even the Steve Witkoffs of the world, and many, many other individuals like that who are less prominent, who are sort of this Abraham Accordists. And by Abraham Accordists, I mean they're people who were sort of there's kind of the interstitial individuals between who kind of made these ties possible. So I think he would probably be seen as like a mediator in some sense, informally. I think he would help navigate the PR concerns of these countries globally. He would help try to build business connections between elites in these countries that would thereafter foster perhaps a political agreement. And I think this is something which is extremely important subtext to the Epstein story is that, he wasn't a public official, obviously. He wasn't associated with any individual. People often ask after reading our stories about his Israel ties, was he a Mossad agent? Absolutely not. I don't think that was the way they describe his relationship. He was somebody who was kind of a product of the post-Cold War world where institutions were sort of downgraded in favor of, powerful transnational individuals and networks of people. Yeah, and what he was doing was actually more important than what the states were doing in a way, and he actually opened the door for the states to make moves later on. So if he was alive today, I would imagine he would start pitching, investment opportunities in Gaza, or making pitching business deals between Saudis and Israelis or Qataris and Israelis as a means of greasing the wheels for later diplomatic encounters. So yeah, I think he'd be very active at this time had he not met his unfortunate end in some way in prison.
Murtaza, we have a question from one of our listeners, but I want to add to it. He says, do you know if the Epstein Files are a topic of media coverage and public interest in the Gulf countries or in the Middle East more broadly? And the reason why I want to highlight that question is I was just in Kuwait a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to go back, I think around the 1st of April, but not just Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, Oman. And the people that I'm going to speak to specifically told me to arrive smart about the Epstein Files because that's what people wanted to talk to me about. Are you getting that kind of feedback from the Gulf countries? Are they as interested in this issue as we are?
It's interesting. I've done interviews with the Egyptian television and Lebanese television and so forth, and Al Jazeera, obviously, which is based in Qatar, also reached out to talk about it. But it's been sort of interesting because, every country in the region, they kind of view this in terms of their own elite interests and their relationships with one another as well too. So I think that it's kind of funny. Like this is a complete false, but I think that they often view a story which comes out, if it mentions an Emirati, for instance, they assume the Qataris seeded it somehow, or
Right.
the Saudis did it.
Sure.
Yeah, or vice versa. If the Qataris have the story, then they think the Emiratis did it. So, and that's just not how things work in the U.S. necessarily. Sometimes it does, I guess, but generally speaking, there is more of a fluidity oftentimes, and it just happens to be a coincidence that maybe one country and others mentioned basically who comes up in the emails. But I think that's kind of the subtext of a lot of it. So I think that the more they talk about it, it's in the context that they would like to use it as a political weapon somehow, or like a tool in the current political standoffs that have taken place. So I think that's kind of the predominant view I've had of it. And of course, it could change as time goes on, but that's my impression. And whereas some of the countries which are more outside the Gulf have been interested to talk about more just for subject of general interest.
I mean, obviously, state media doesn't have the kind of lockhold on people's information flow that they used to do. But in the Gulf states, are these is this story getting much sort of official mainstream coverage, or is it something people have to get on their own from the internet?
I haven't seen much, and there may be some stories here and there, but I was checking, Emirati media, and so I wasn't expecting it to show up there. But I didn't see very much there. Al Jazeera has covered it in English, and there may be some Arabic as well too. They've covered it, but they're a bit different because they do have covered things globally and they're sort of dispersed and so forth. So it's somewhat less locked down in some ways, but I have not seen a tremendous amount of coverage. And normally, for the magnitude of the stories, you'd expect to see, most importantly, television hits with people regularly. To talk about it, that's been relatively limited, muted. And it's not to say they're not interested in it and haven't covered it all, but it's I don't think it's being framed yet, at least primarily as a Gulf story. But it's interesting, John, that you mentioned that they wanted to talk about it specifically when you go there, because that may change in the near future.
Murtaza, we have a question from a viewer, Desert Fox. What do you make of the Pizzagate allegations and crimes involving more occultish practices?
Yeah, it's funny. There's some some documents in the Epstein releases which contain these very extraordinary sort of allegations of occult practices and murder and very extreme things. And it's very difficult to vet them per se because these are allegations that were the FBI recorded and they talked about. As far as I've seen, there was not any follow up where they verified in granular detail, but it seems like they did take it seriously enough to report. I think you do have to report everything that is reported to you, but they did discuss it in a way which did not immediately dismiss it. So I don't really know what to make of that. But what I would say is that I've had to update my own priors a little bit about how I think the world works in the last few years working on these stories, because a lot of things which not saying that everything is true that people allege, but a lot of things which were dismissed as conspiracies at one point, they did turn out to be validated by information later on, and now they're just sort of accepted as being true. So even the sex trafficking that elite sex trafficking of children that Epstein was involved in, that's what sounds like an insane, egregious, morally unconscionable allegation to make a few years ago, and yet now we know it's very true. It's documented voluminously. So I don't really disparage anyone for having suspicions or bring up anything about any of these subjects anymore, because I think it's all worthy of investigation and looking into, because it seems like pretty much anything is potentially people were capable of at this point. The very, very extreme
Apparently
things.
so.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I'm glad this question came up, because if he hadn't asked it, I would have. Reynolds Rapp's asking, what do you think of people saying that the bigger story is that Epstein was a money launderer for intelligence agencies as his main role?
Well, it's very interesting. We did a story about this at Dropsite based on Epstein's, longer history. It was sort of almost a rebuttal to the New York Times story about how he made his money. It just happened to be timed in the same way. But I think that is true. But that was one aspect of who Epstein was. And I think that he actually got his start as a money launderer for intelligence operations, and he got his start in the world of an episode known as Iran-Contra in the 1980s. He was very close to people tied to Iran-Contra. Adnan Khashoggi, Douglas Leese, John Stanley Pottinger, many, many other individuals you can read about in their story. And Iran-Contra was a episode where, not to go over in great detail, people probably know a lot about it, but money was generated for these black budgets, off the books budgets.
That was the
to fund
purpose.
These,
yeah,
that was perfect, exactly. So you need money which you could use for things that you don't want the public to know about, and you don't want to be subject to congressional or a presidential oversight or whatever. You need people who are good at laundering money and hiding money and cleaning money, and he was someone who was very good at that, and that became his sort of his killer, his sort of a key competency that he had. As time went on, and he became a very powerful person, I think that he expanded his range. He was someone who was this connector, this individual who was facilitating the activities of powerful people all around the world, including money laundering and beyond that as well too. And I will say one thing very quickly as well too. We haven't touched on the issue of the blackmail issue. I think that the question is almost a moot point in some ways, because people keep raising the bar in the sense of, well, is there a photo of him standing behind the camera filming Bill Clinton and confronting him with a camera with a video and threatening him to raise taxes or something like that, or this is going to happen. I think it's actually not even necessary for that this coercive sort of blackmail to take place, because what we do know is that he knew about the activities that these powerful people were doing and was facilitating them for a very, very long period of time, and he had privileged knowledge about things that they didn't want to be public. That, by its nature, gives you leverage over people, inherently, regardless of when you coerce them thereafter or not. It does influence your relationship with them. So I think that, he was somebody who was in a politically privileged role, and I do hope we find more granular information about this. But I think he was somebody who, he played many, many different roles, and all of them were, very consequential.
Murtaza, in the time that we have left, are we going to see the other half of the files? And if so, what would you like to find in those?
I hope so. It's interesting because they were quite adamant, it seemed, after this release, to describe it as his final release, and try to say this is the end of the story and so forth.
We heard that before, though.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I think there'll be a fight, and I know that Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie have insisted upon disclosure of the final 3 million of the files, and I do find the excuses that they raised for not releasing them, privacy and so forth, were not very compelling, because a lot of private things were accidentally released in this disclosure and so forth. So I don't really, buy that per se. But I hope we do see it, and I hope that it's released in a way which is a bit more responsible, first of all, because I think they released it. It was a disastrous Epstein file releases so far, deliberately almost seeding confusion, chaotic, disorganized. We're trying to do our best to reorganize the files for public analysis. We have a tool called Jmail we're working on with some researchers, which restructures all the emails and the image of a Google inbox of Epstein, so people can go through chronologically and kind of see where things fit together, which you can extract a lot more meaning from. But I hope that if there is more releases, that they do release it in a way which allows people to actually view it in a way which we can glean information of. More.
Last question before we let you go: is the haphazard way that the documents have been released, and and the huge mistakes, for example, the unredacted naked photos of underage girls, is that a feature or is it a bug? Do you think it's just the sort of haphazard nature of this administration, which didn't hire enough professional people to handle this? Or is this an old-fashioned document dump where we dump everything on journalists and they just can't handle it and process it on time, and then they hope that the public interest moves on?
Well, if people remember, they did it on Friday afternoon. So Friday afternoon,
always.
The timing exactly to try to specifically, dull the impact of it. And I would say that in the age of you can make an AI app to do something in like half an hour now to arrange things in a way which is accessible. I can only imagine that this was intentional, because if we at Dropsite can rearrange it with researchers in a more digestible format. We're like 8 people at Dropsite and a few researchers. The federal government, the Department of Justice, of course, can release this in a digestible manner. I think they're trying not to.
They have more money than God if they want. Thank you so much, Murtaza Hussain, for joining us. Hope you'll come back. He's the National Security and Foreign Affairs correspondent at Dropsite News, and I would say an expert on the Epstein files. So
Dropsitenews.com. If you haven't been, check it out. I'm there every day.
Go check it out. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Murtaza.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Outstanding.
So good.
Dropsite News, this is what investigative journalism is supposed to be, right? This is what the Post, the Times, the Journal, the LA Times, what they used to do.
Right.
And by the way, effective today, there was a massive layoff at the Washington Post.
It's happening right now.
As we're speaking, I don't even know who's still around. Yeah. But Dropsite News, this is the way journalism is supposed to be.
For sure. And I totally agree with Murtaza. Like with AI, you and I could process this stuff.
Sure.
It's not hard.
That's right. It's not hard. You're exactly right.
I mean, it used to be it's just like, holy shit. If you ever watched Aaron Brockovich when they do the big data dump with
exactly.
the
Remember that? They filled the law
shit.
offices with boxes, and they're like, well, now what are we going to do?
Yeah, LA Times did that to me too.
Sure.
I think I had a storage unit with I think it was 68 bankers boxes worth of bullshit. Turned out to be great though. They underestimated my ability to read fast.
You know what they did to me? They released 15,000 documents, which is a lot of documents. It's not 3 million like the Epstein files, but 15,000 documents, every single one of them they classified top secret, even if it wasn't, including the first draft of the script for the movie Kill the Messenger that I was the script advisor on. Top secret, top and bottom, and twice
Great
on each
movie.
side.
Gary Webb.
And then they told us that the only place we were allowed to look at the documents was in their conference room, in the Justice Department's conference room, because it was a skiff.
Oh my gosh.
Thinking there's no way that these, $2,000 an hour attorneys are going to go sit in a Justice Department skiff all day, every day, going through documents. And that's exactly what happened.
And that is true. Right. Yeah. Too bad you couldn't get some volunteers to do it. But anyway,
Yes.
All right, we have an ad. So if that's okay, John, I'm going to go ahead and read that. Still haven't tried 1775 coffee? Now's your shot. The 1775 starter kit just dropped. Only 1,000 units. You're getting the bold dark roast that hits hard, the smooth medium roast, and the vitality mushroom coffee for clean energy and laser focus. No crash. All single origin, small batch, toxin free and mold free. Plus, you're also getting a gold spoon clip because freedom isn't scooped with plastic. A frother strong enough to stir your coffee and your mother-in-law's opinions in a black 1775 tumbler. $170 worth of coffee and gear, yours for $99. It's for the ones who've been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble, wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler, it is. Go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. Okay, so shall we?
Ted,
go ahead.
Yeah, excuse me. I want to jump in. Sodan is always so good to us and kind and generous. And he's got a question. Sodan, thank you very much for the $20. He raises something that I wanted to raise with you that happened last night. He says, good morning, guys. John, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi was killed last night in Libya by 4 masked gunmen. Thoughts on this? Any intel agency involvement? I have lots of thoughts on this. Actually, I met him in 2008 when Muammar Gaddafi was trying to sort of rehabilitate his reputation in the United States. He reached out to McClarty Associates. I was associated with McClarty Associates. They had a film and television division that my best friend was heading, and we were looking for somewhere to shoot Bruno with Sacha Baron Cohen. And he insisted that it be in Syria. We said it's a terrible idea to shoot it in Syria. We suggested Libya. And he said, no, as a Jew, I'm terrified to go to Libya. And we said, no, seriously, they're like constantly in touch with us, trying to get us to film movies there. And so I happened to be in London, and Saif, his name is Saif al-Islam. It means sword of Islam. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi was in London specifically to try to gin up movie business. And so we met with him, perfectly nice guy, arrogant, but his father had instructed him to turn things around. And by God, he was in London trying to turn things around. He was Gaddafi's second son, and he was the heir apparent. He was arrested in 2011 when his dad was executed or assassinated, or whatever word you want to use. And
he wasn't executed.
No, he got a dagger shoved up his butt, and it
after
ruptured.
an American drone blew him up.
Yeah, he was hiding in a storm drain, and they shoved a dagger up his butt and lacerated his liver. He bled to death.
And Hillary Clinton famously cackled.
Yeah. We came, we saw, he died.
Yep.
Yeah, the animal.
He's a beautiful person.
So Saif was arrested in 2011. He was part of a general amnesty in 2017, I believe, and was living in Tirzan, which is this city south of Tripoli, where he had been arrested and put in under house arrest. So he was just in Tirzan, by all accounts, just watching TV. And these 4 masked gunmen, they disabled the security cameras at the house, burst through the door. He tried to defend himself, and they murdered him. So could it have been intel? Sure. It probably wasn't, because he wasn't a direct, immediate, threat to anybody. It was probably another political faction, maybe another tribe. But that's going to be it for the Gaddafi family. There's still a bunch of them. They're scattered all around, but he was the only one.
A lot of Libyans really miss the Gaddafi.
Very much so.
If I were Libyan,
I mean, you couldn't stand on the street corner and say that Muammar Gaddafi was an animal, but they had the best roads in North Africa or anywhere in Africa. They had the healthiest economy. They had the biggest oil revenue. They had a stable currency. It's a heck of a lot better than the chaos that we're seeing now, the anarchy that is Libya.
No doubt. People who, it's always funny to me when people who haven't seen chaos and anarchy, it's like, yeah, but, and it's like, there's no yeah, but. If you don't have law and order, you've got nothing.
That's it.
All right, we've got lots of questions to get through. But before we do, let me just ask you about this tragedy off the coast of Greece.
It's terrible.
The Greek Coast Guard encountered a migrant boat. There was a collision. 15 people left dead. John, there's been a history, not just with the Greeks, but with other countries who've encountered migrant boats deliberately ramming and disabling and causing people to drown. Do you think that's what happened here?
No, I don't. So what it is everybody on this boat was Afghan, except the captain, who appears to be Moroccan. And the Turkish government takes 15 billion euros a year to hold refugees in refugee camps until they can be systematically resettled. What the Turks do in order to crash the Greek economy is they put these refugees that they're being paid to care for, they put them on boats, and they allow the boats to go to Greece in the middle of the night. This happened to be just off the coast of the island of Chios, where my first wife was from, not my favorite place in Greece. The boat had a 300 horsepower engine. It was a high speed speedboat. When the Greek Coast Guard ship encountered it, the Greeks aren't innocents in this, because they deliberately turned off the surveillance camera. Right? It would be like a cop with a body camera turning it off before he starts pounding on somebody.
Yep.
So
as they do.
So they turned off the camera, but as they went to approach the boat turned and hit the Coast Guard boat broadside. The Greek press today is saying this one's not on us. They tried to get away. The 2 boats were too close, and when the Moroccan captain turned his boat to try to escape, he broadsided. He T-boned the Greek Coast Guard boat. The Moroccan boat flipped, threw everybody in the water, and it's cold in the Aegean right now. The water temperatures, it is here.
And for people who aren't familiar, it's basically the ocean. I mean, you can have big ass waves. I mean, it's
big
not,
ones.
This isn't a little lake.
And in all seriousness, it's also shark infested. I mean, there's one thing about Greek waters. There are sharks absolutely everywhere. You can see sharks just standing on the shore. You can see them just going back and forth. My cousin and I, when we were there a year ago, we took pictures of them.
You can see sharks standing on the shore.
I mean, yeah, while you're standing on the shore. Thank you for that, catching that. So this is bad. The Minister of Maritime Affairs announced that he's doing an investigation, and it'll be a serious investigation. But the root of this problem is that the Turks forcibly push all these people onto boats and say, you're on your own and we're keeping the money.
Let's try to do some questions first come, first serve. Teflon Money, Don, do we see credible evidence that the Lebanese revolution of 2019 was externally engineered by the CIA or Israel, or was it primarily a domestic uprising driven by economic collapse? Well, they always have economic collapse.
Yeah, it's almost a failed state. I would bet money that the Israelis pushed them over the line.
Agree with that. Yeah. Matt Crambit, love the show. Keep up the good work. In our opinion, what's the odds that Trump decides to strike Iran again, or will the proposed talks result in a long-term solution? That's definitely two separate questions. I think the odds are well over 50% that Trump and or Israel will strike again. Well,
agreed.
Agreed. And in terms of the long-term resolution, no time soon. I mean,
no time soon.
This administration is not good at long-term solutions.
No, that's right.
They're too spazzy. They don't stay focused on anything.
That's absolutely right.
Jackson Tart, at your time at CIA, who was the biggest counterintelligence threat to the United States besides Israel? Is there lots of American intelligence officers who've been recruited by foreigners?
No. I mean, you can count them on two hands through history. The biggest counterintelligence threat when I was there, besides Israel, was China.
Probably
now,
still. No?
Probably still. And I think that now, all these years later, current CIA officers would add Russia again.
Mm-hmm.
But in that period when I was there, we were trying hard to make nice with the Russians, which was very easy with Boris Yeltsin in charge, because we essentially controlled Yeltsin, and he was a drunk, and he and Bill Clinton just loved each other, so it was kind of easy.
The Russians never will forgive us for that, and nor should they.
No, we wrecked their country.
Yeah, we really did.
And then we gave nothing for it in return.
We had such an opportunity to just.
Oh my God!
Can you imagine? Like, we're going to help you do the soft landing to capitalism, Marshall Plan for Russia. They'd be our ally now.
Yes, they would.
We would have carved up the world with them, or at least half the world. John, thanks for much for the $10. What do you make of the recent Putin video appealing to the West, saying Russia isn't our enemy, but our leaders are? It seems to align suspiciously with the Epstein stuff, garden variety propaganda.
Yeah,
I'd say but he's not wrong.
He's not wrong, but yeah, it's just. I mean, listen, to make a video like that, it costs you nothing,
right?
So why not?
Right. $2 from Anger is a Gift. Thoughts on Bubba Chandler for the Pittsburgh Pirates?
Yes, sir. Gotta love Bubba Chandler. I'm looking for big things. It's funny. I was watching ESPN the other day. If anybody cares about the lowly Pittsburgh Pirates, we've got Paul Skeens, who
Pittsburgh was the enemy of the Cincinnati Reds,
without a doubt.
Yeah,
when Pittsburgh was good enough to make it a rivalry. So we've got Paul Skeens, who 2 years ago won the Rookie of the Year, and last year won the Cy Young. The guy's a once-in-a-generation phenom, and we have to build the team around him. Bubba Chandler is almost as good, and I think that he's gonna show us great things this year. With that said, the Pirates lost like 92 games last season. Oof. Out of 162 game season, and much to my surprise, as we're rebuilding the team this year, ESPN says we're going to lose like 106 games.
Oh man!
And I don't know how that can be, because we've got two of the best pitchers in the league.
That's pretty insane.
I don't know. We'll see.
Three Birds, One Stone. Thanks for the $2. Ted, what cartoon? We mentioned this yesterday. Pissed off Clinton. Can I get an autographed copy? Yes, you can get an autographed copy. I believe fucking Clinton got Arafat in Oslo to disarm Palestine, all for lies, probably under compromat from Epstein and Netanyahu. I don't know about that last part, but the cartoon was basically depicted. I had drawn George H.W. Bush in a certain way, basically wearing a Yale leather jacket because he was like this preppy dude.
Yeah.
And so I have, at one point when Bill Clinton was copying Bush's policies, I had him walk into an old office in the White House, find Bush's old jacket and put it on. And he was like, I'm not George H.W. Bush. That's what I pissed him off. Yeah. Justin for nothing. What do you guys think about Tulsi Gabbard being some sort of election czar? Seems like another push to normalize Palantir.
She issued a statement yesterday saying that this is well within her purview as the director of national intelligence, that it's a threat, that the 2020 election was stolen from Trump, and that this is a threat to our way of life. And so she has to conduct her, blah, 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 blah.
That's like basically like Trump's hand, like talking through the hand puppet there.
Yes.
Philip Blair, with this one we could probably talk about for hours. Can we or should we start screening for sadistic sociopathy, at our various gates to power? If it were possible, that'd be awesome. But on the other hand, aren't we screening in favor of it?
It's those tendencies, like when they said, John, don't come home from Pakistan quite yet. We want you to stop off in this other country and break into this guy's house and plant cameras in there. I was like, okay, sounds like fun. And I did. Canceled my vacation with my fiance and went and broke into a guy's house and planted cameras all over the house. That's a sociopathic tendency. It's not normal people don't break into other people's houses and plant devices. But I happily did it.
And leaders are worse. I mean,
leaders really are worse. Yeah.
Because they're on top of the pyramid that like you were in the middle of there. Right. Thanks for the $5 from T. Kyle. John, what was the story of the analyst who literally did nothing but watch a road being built going to China? I'd be interested in learning more about that guy. I love do nothing stories. There was a story years ago, and I want to hear the answer to this question, John, about a guy who he had a job monitoring. He ran the dirigible docking station on top of the Empire State Building. So, in case this was an advertised job in like the Civil Service magazine, which is called The Chief in New York City, and he saw this thing. He was like. So in case he was trained to dock like a Zeppelin if one ever were to appear, and it would be able to be docked on top of the Empire State Building. He was like, this is the ultimate. I will never have to work. So he was a novelist, and he just figured he'd sit up there and just wait for the Zeppelin and write novels, which is what he did. And I think he made a pretty good living. Anyway, tell us about the road guy.
So this was my second line supervisor. His name was Ron. I don't think he retired undercover, but just to be on the safe side, I'm just going to say Ron. Ron was a good guy. GS-15, deputy division chief, and his job as the North Vietnam infrastructure analyst was to just watch this road being built. So he starts looking for the road or watching the road. He's examining top secret satellite photos. Every couple of days, there's another picture coming from the satellite about the road, and they're building it longer and longer, and it's heading north, right from Hanoi. It's going north, and he's like, "Oh my God, they're building this road. What's the road for? They're going to bring nukes from China, and then we're all screwed." And it got so serious that he was actually taken to the Oval Office to brief President Nixon about this road. Like, do we bomb the road? We're going to have to bomb the road, right? So we're bombing the road, and this went on for years. You
should make this into a movie treatment because by the way, this is go send it to the Coen brothers. It's perfect for them.
It's waiting for Godot, and the Coen brothers would be perfect for it.
Yeah.
So the war ends. The North Vietnamese win. Everything changes at the CIA. We make nice with the Vietnamese government. We start doing liaison exchanges. And Ron flies out to Hanoi to meet with the Vietnamese and do this intelligence exchange. And one day at lunch, he pulls one of these generals aside and he said, I just have to ask you, why were you building this road? What was the road for? And he's like, we just didn't have a road to China. You had to go every which way. And we just decided to build a road. That was it.
That's all.
That was all it was.
That's so great. Yeah. I mean, it's often things are really just that simple. There's nothing much to it. Adam, John, I beg to differ. Migrants chose Greece over Turkey to access the EU. It's not true that they get pushed by the Turkish Coast Guard.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
The opposite. They save those drifters all the time.
Absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. The Turks are animals when it comes to hacking my ex account, which they have done successfully. I'm out of it right now, and pushing refugees. They've been doing it for decades. This isn't new. This has been going on for decades. Ever since people started leaving Lebanon at the start of the Civil War, and the Greek economy started to grow. The Turks are really underhanded about this, and it's a violation of international law on top of it.
Let's talk about, a couple more questions. Marlon Brando, why isn't the intelligence community more concerned that the Epstein files do not compromise the president? Is this not a national security issue?
I don't think I understand that.
It's sort of a bit of a clumsily worded question. Basically, is it a national should the intel community be looking into whether Trump was compromised by Epstein / the Mossad? Because if he was, that would be a national security issue.
I would assume that they've done that. I would assume that they've read all of these documents. Well, of course they have, because they're supposed to be redacting them. Sure. I don't know.
I have no thoughts on this. John, let's talk about this situation. Rafah border crossing to eat between Gaza and Egypt reopened a couple of days ago. Only a few people have been allowed to go through.
And they're all like in critical condition medically.
Right. No normal. And we don't have any idea whether they'll be able to return. I would be skeptical. 12 people, however, were waiting to get back into Gaza to reunite with their families or just go back home. And they were able to return, but it wasn't an easy trip. 3 women were ordered off the bus on the way back by members of an Israeli-backed Palestinian militia named Abu Shabab. They searched their bags and their bodies, called into a room. When one woman was called in, the mom went in first, in her 50s. Then when the daughter went in, she found her mom in her 50s kneeling on the floor, blindfolded with her hands handcuffed behind her back. She said that the Israeli soldiers did the same to her, and then questioned her about Hamas, things that we didn't know and had no connection to. That's, I guess, not that surprising. But they also pressured her to act as an informant
of course.
For the IDF.
Of course.
They threatened that they will detain me and I won't return to my children. There was no beating, but there were insults, threats, and psychological pressure. The mom confirmed the report to the AP. Third woman gave a similar account. She described being handcuffed, blindfolded, and interrogated. We were humiliated. So pretty horrible. If this is the word's going to get out very quickly. I mean, hell, the word's out. Here we are talking about it. I mean, are people going to avoid this border crossing if they can?
Yeah. They'll avoid it because of stories like this. They'll avoid it because they'll not be allowed to come back in, and they'll be permanently separated from their families.
And so who's this Israeli-backed goon squad?
Yeah, I haven't heard of that
Palestinians.
Just until yesterday. It was the first time I had heard of it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I mean, gross. Obviously, on the there's always someone willing to sell out.
And speaking of gross, I want to say something. Alan Dershowitz was on Piers Morgan yesterday again. I want to punch this guy in the face. I really do. One of the other guests whom I didn't know, was talking about atrocities committed very recently by IDF troops, especially shooting children. They were on the topic of shooting children. And first, Dershowitz denied that any such thing has ever happened. No children are being shot. And then he said that, well, yeah, there were a couple of children shot, but every one of those IDF soldiers has been prosecuted. And the guy's like, you're lying. No, I'm not. I know because I'm in touch with the Minister of Justice. It's like, no, you're just making this up. This is what Dershowitz does. Any criticism of Israel, number one, you're anti-Semitic. Number two, you're lying. Number three, Israel is doing everything according to international law. Always. And none of that stuff is true.
No, I mean, yeah, obviously anyone with eyes can plainly see that. Robbie, you have something you want to say?
Yeah, just real quick. Over here on Rumble, because Rumble has this really spiffy raid function, it's actually allowing us to do more than just build this show. We're actually in the process of building an actual network. So right as soon as this show ends, the audience from DeProgram will automatically move over to the TMI show with Ted Rall and Manila Chan. And what we're actually doing is working on building a real alternative network, not just one show for people who are after truth. So if that's what you want to have, come over to Rumble. Unfortunately, YouTube won't let us do it, but here on Rumble, though, will be a seamless transition.
And please contribute to Robbie Aid. I'm putting it back up. Thank you very much, Robbie. We have time for probably one more brief. We should hit this quickly. Trump's threatening to nationalize the elections. Look, the thing is, I don't take any of these individual stories very seriously, but as a whole, they bother me, right? I mean, there's Minneapolis had its voter records. The Trump administration tried to shake them down for those. There's this similar attempt, by the FBI. They've scooped in and raided the Fulton County, Georgia, which is Atlanta, the biggest city in the state, their voting records. And now Trump's talking about nationalizing. I mean, is this just simply as basic as Trump's worried about the midterm elections? Or is this something greater? Is this something like the Democrats would say, an actual attempt to try to see about overturning the results of either the midterm and or the 2028 presidential campaign?
You're asking me?
Yeah. Yes, I am. I mean, obviously the Constitution's very clear. The states run elections.
The point is, this is something that Bruce Fein talks about all the time. He can't do it. Period.
On the other hand, but then Bush v. Gore, right? Bush v. Gore, they should never have heard the case.
They shouldn't have heard the case, but the Constitution says that elections are to be carried out by the states. Now, he can use his authority as president to pressure the states, but we have 51 separate state elections for president, the 50 states and Washington, D.C., and he can't change it.
Right. So the question is, I mean, I agree with that. But I mean, the thing is, you can also nothing's actionable until you take it to court and it works its way up to the Supreme Court, which can take months or even years sometimes.
Yes.
Right.
But rest assured that federal district and appellate courts are going to put holds on anything that the White House wants to do that would take elections out of the hands of the states and put them in the hands of the feds.
Is this trolling, or do you think the administration actually would love to do something if they could?
Without a doubt, they'd love to do it. Yeah, without a doubt.
But so this is like do you think they're running it up to the flagpole just to see what happens?
Yes, they have nothing to lose.
Like, why not? Well, I don't know. Their reputation as being protectors of
please. He's putting a statue of Christopher Columbus in front of the White House now. Did you see that today?
I did see that. That and the that I'm personally holding out for the cage match on July 4th, but that's just me. Nothing says dignity like a cage match. All right, thanks so much, John, for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, as we are every weekday, 9 a.m. Eastern time for DeProgram with Ted Rall and John Kiriakou. Please like, follow, and share the show. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for your support and your donations. And don't forget Robbie Aid. Stay tuned for TMI with me and Manila Chan. That's coming right up. Bye, John. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.